Welcome to Healing Vibes with Aeriol, healing body, mind, and soul. Hello, everyone. Thanks for dropping in. This is Aeriol Asher, and you are at the Healing Body, Mind, and Soul podcast. I'm super duper excited today because I have the honor and pleasure to be here with Beth Proudfoot, and she's so juicy. I can't wait till you hear what she has to say today. We've been talking a lot on the podcast about getting through difficult emotions. We have been talking about grief. We have been talking about fear. We have been talking about betrayal and how to clear your emotional body of all these things. Now, Beth is also a fabulous leader, marriage family counselor, and she is talking about collaborative divorce. Now, how wonderful would it be if you come to the place where you know you have to separate and you can have some help to do it elegantly instead of staring into a dark abyss, right? It's not the end of the world, it's the beginning. Anyway, I don't want to give too much away about our conversation today, but I'm really excited because, after the difficult part comes the fresh new beginning. So I'm really excited to have Beth Proudfoot help us navigate through this kind of thing. If there's anybody out there who this kind of information would be helpful for. So Beth, thank you so much for being willing to come on today and just have a juicy conversation about the work that you do and how you serve people in this area.
I'm so happy to be here. I feel like I'm kind of an evangelist, although that's, I don't know, some people feel that's a dirty word, but an evangelist is someone who just really wants to get the word out. And to me, the word needs to be gotten out about collaborative divorce and how meaningful it can be, how transformational it can be for every member of the family. So I'm glad to be able to be here and to talk about it.
Well, let's break it down, right? Because divorce has got to be difficult. I mean, I think my mom was married 5 times. Okay, so I have had a little bit of experience in this, and I have a background in some creative family dynamics that make this subject really juicy to me, and probably fuel a lot of my work with self-expression and voice for children and adults, children of all ages, about self-expression and being able to manage sensitivities and difficulties. So break it down for us. Divorce is difficult enough. Okay. What is the difference of collaborative divorce?
Okay, so collaborative divorce, the concept was initiated by this lawyer, Stu Webb, a lawyer in Chicago, who had just had enough with the ugly world of family law, and how the whole system, the lawyers, the judges, actually contributed to the war. The horrible, awful back and forth. They were making things worse. And he's a very spiritual guy. And he said, look, until you come up to the big picture of actually we're all part of the collective unconscious, when we're down here on earth, right, we tend to polarize, right? We get into that negative pole that's small and angry and bitter, right? And fearful. Actually, it's fear. It's all fear based, that pole. Or we come to the other pole, the positive pole of thinking about the future, about thinking about the best for everybody, about love, right? So we bop between fear and love all of the time in our lives. And the system, the way divorce has been done in this country is all about fear. It's all in that fear. It's all getting people into their fear and getting them to stay there. Could we have he called it a paradigm shift. Could we shift the paradigm and actually work hard to get our clients who are divorcing from fear into love and hope about the future. And yes, it's possible, but it takes a team. It's very difficult to do this with just, two lawyers, although they do it across the country with two lawyers who are committed to resolving things peacefully. It turns out it's better to have a few more people on the team. So we add a mental health professional who's actually really skilled at helping people to settle their emotions, to get into their higher selves, to communicate well, even while they're trying to solve the very serious problems that come with divorce. But yeah, you know what? Let's add somebody else. Let's add a neutral financial person. So no more is this, I've got my finance guy and I've got my finance guy, and we're going to argue about it. No, let's have one person who just gathers all the information, and the people who come in say, I'm going to be transparent. I got nothing to hide. I'm going to put it all on the table. So everybody puts all the finances on the table with this neutral financial person. The coaches, and this is what I do in this process. I'm a collaborative divorce coach. So what I do is help my client to process things through, to be able to complain with me all about how, to get into that fear space for a minute, right? And then let's come up into, in 10 years, when you're thinking about your divorce and wanting to know that you did your divorce with integrity, what's that decision that you made right now, right? And the coaches also help the couple to do the whole parenting plan. So I have deep background. I've been a child therapist for over 30 years. And so I bring a value add that a lawyer doesn't have, that the judge doesn't have, that I know kids and I know what's best for kids. And so we figure out the parenting plan together with somebody who knows kids, right? And that's valuable. The lawyers come in like at the very end. Oh, are you ready to figure out the finances now and to do some negotiation, right? Together. We got this whole team here to support you, to keep you in this nice container where you can, it's not easy, Aeriol. It's hard. We don't get rid of the bad feelings. The bad feelings are there. We just help people to stay in that fear place the shortest amount of time possible, to bop up into love and generosity as often as they can, and to come up with an agreement that they're like, yeah, I agree. And then we're done. We don't have to go back to court. We're not arguing forever. Everybody agreed, so yeah, we're done.
Having
It's beautiful.
having this skilled team in place and then bringing the lawyers at the end seems so smart to me. Right? It seems like, because then the lawyers are not having to navigate through the emotional stuff, and having somebody like yourself, Beth, what a valuable asset when the adults are being triggered and acting like children, and not to mention what happens to the children during the process and all the nasty meanies that come out. That takes its toll, that leaves permanent scars for people to go create those kind of situations again, right? If you don't navigate the path well. And I love wow, I have never heard of this before, and I didn't realize that there were so many. It makes sense to have this neutral finance person, and to have everybody in their designated perspective and spot to help at different ways. What a beautiful thing. So if somebody's listening and they're like, oh my God, if only, right? If only, my goodness, if only I knew this existed, I could have saved myself, or what, and especially if there's anybody who's thinking about if they're making life changes and navigating in that direction, where can they reach out, or how do they find out more about this process, and how to get on board with their own team, or how to get their own collaborative team like this?
So I'll give you a few resources. One is there's a website, Collaborative Divorce California. And it has a lot of information on it. It's great, including profiles of all of the people throughout the state of California who do this work. Now, the truth is that it's international, though. There are collaborative teams in Australia and Japan and Singapore. They're all over the world. And there's an international, it's called the International Academy of Collaborative Practice. And I think that URL is just collaborativepractice.com. People can go to my website, bethproudfoot.com. I have a little video on that website that just kind of goes through the process. Another really cool thing is we teach a class. And actually what we do in that class is we teach all of the ways that you can get divorced. Because there's a lot of, people think there's only one path. You know, we each have to hire a lawyer and have a war. But there's a lot of paths to divorce. And there really are. And in the class, we go through all the paths, pros and cons of each one. And different families really need a different process. You know, some people need to go to court. You know, if they need the judge to have a court order to protect somebody, right? You got to go to court. There's not a choice there. Anyway, this class is called Divorce Options. There's another URL. Okay, I hope you guys have a pencil here. It's
we'll put it in the show notes. They can check.
Okay, divorceoptionsinfo.org. And that is the state of California and some of the other states when this class is being taught. And you can go to it's free. You can go and it's online now because of COVID and people can just listen and understand. And we go through not only all the processes, but some of the financial and legal and emotional issues of divorce. So it's a really great class. It really helps people, I think, to make a wise decision for their family.
Wow, what an amazing resource. I'm having a flashback moment of after college. I was married for a little while, Beth, and I thought how ridiculous we were arguing over omelet pans and ridiculous things. Now, we were young in our early 20s, and probably if we met and did it all over again, things would go a lot better because we would be a lot more prepared for these things. But we certainly did not handle that well. And I remember how complicated it was and just how much we hung on to things in our pride. It was just ridiculous. And now, years later, flash forward to having a little bit of life wisdom that I was not prepared with. I sure do wish I would have at least called upon some wisdom assistance from somebody else. I really think that could have played out a lot differently, at least more peacefully. It was very dramatic and not fun. And I don't wish anything like that upon anyone, you know. Why?
Yeah, I think working in divorce, I get to see what marriage means and what's important about marriage and how to keep a marriage together. And you know, sometimes I keep seeing this over and over again, that what happens when people don't solve the problems that they have in their marriage. You know, this like, I think this, there's no, we're just going to have to agree to disagree and the problem never got solved. That becomes like a little brick of resentment that starts to build a wall between people. You know, and every time you didn't communicate well enough, or you just couldn't figure out how to solve that problem, there's another brick of resentment in the middle of your relationship. And, you know, if that wall gets too high, there's no way back.
Well, I'm so happy that there are zealots, evangelists, if you will, like yourself. I love that word, so that's fine. You can use that here. I use it all the time. I always say I'm an energy healing evangelist. I'm pretty okay with that title. So I'm just so blown away by how much sense this work makes, and I'm really sorry that in my family it didn't come along sooner, because I know that there's a couple people that we could have had some smoother transitions in a couple places. I'm just being open and honest here, but I really want our listeners to know that there is another way of doing things, and it doesn't all have to be Kramer versus Kramer. Is that what there was an old movie called that was about divorce. I probably saw that a little too young in my life as well. So And yeah, it's very sad, very sad. Well,
Yeah.
Beth, I'm so happy that you're an evangelist. I'm so happy about the work you do. Can you give a tip to our listener out there who's going, I don't know what I should do? Would you just recommend going to the website and getting on the Google train down the collaborative divorce? Or how about they reach out to you, Beth? Are you seeing clients these days? Can they reach out to you personally?
They absolutely can. I think that that's a great way to get started. When you're in this,
Mm-hmm.
maybe you haven't even told your spouse that you're thinking about divorce. Great to start with someone who's a collaborative coach, because they really understand divorce. They really can help guide you through the whole process, and could continue as your coach throughout the collaborative process if that's the process that's going to work for both of you, because it's a voluntary thing. So both people have to say, yes, I'm for this, I want to do this. So that gentle way to come in is to hire a coach. Go to that Collaborative Divorce California website, or go to my website, see if I would be a good fit, and just come in for a meeting and just talk about it. Just talk about what's happening in your family and what might be the best process going forward.
Yeah,
So
what
I
stage
think
they're
that's a
at.
good way to begin. Yeah,
Yeah, it really
yeah.
depends what your stage you're at. You're opening up my
There's
mind
this
to
thing.
different perspectives.
Yeah, yeah. There's this thing called discernment counseling. It's not something I do, but I refer people to it all the time, where people just aren't sure. Are we going to get divorced, or are we going to stay together? Should we go to marriage counseling, or should we find lawyers, right?
It's
And
pre-marriage
discernment
counseling
counseling all
counseling.
pre-divorce counseling. Yeah, it's just sort of the whole, it's like a 6-week program, and at the end you decide, which way are we going to go? And how respectful to make that decision together. So often it's one person who says, yep, this is it, bye, right? And that's really hard on the person who wasn't expecting it, who really thought that the marriage could continue, right? So doing some kind of work ahead of time. So much better if you guys can come to a joint decision that this is probably best for us and for our kids to make a transition here.
Is it easier for people to communicate when they have a third party, a witness? Is it easier for people to work through the stuff when there's a moderator?
Absolutely. And I think, actually what I do in a lot of my work, in my couples counseling and in my divorce counseling, is a lot of just teaching basic communication skills. In marriage counseling, what we teach is communication toward intimacy, toward getting closer. In divorce coaching, what we teach is business-like communication, because you're going to be in the business of raising your kids. So how do we take the intimacy out, actually? We're not doing intimate conversation anymore. We're doing boardroom communication, just very business-like, taking the feelings out, because that other person is not going to be the person that you go to when you're upset anymore. That's what divorce means, is that, that person when you were married, that was the person you went to when you were upset, and they helped you to feel better, right? Now we're divorcing, that's the very last person you're going to go to for support. So when you're communicating, you have to make it more businesslike, more structured. And we actually do very structured communication to teach people how to, it feels artificial at first, and then they start to, okay, it actually works. We actually solve problems together. Our kids got on the swim team because we were on the same page, right? So it's just different kind of communication, but it's all, we didn't get a manual. We're listening to our parents and how they communicated. We're listening to our friends and how they communicate, and really learning kind of sophisticated communication skills. It takes some practice, it takes some education.
And energetically, correct me if I'm wrong, Beth, but what it sounds like is you're redrawing energetic or emotional body, right? The boundaries of these things, and you're kind of Yeah, you're retracting the emotional body boundaries or something along those lines. I could see it in my head. Sorry, visionary, intuitive visionary. So, this is how, yeah, well, as you're talking, I see the process happening. It's wonderful.
Yeah.
Man, this is such important work. This is such important work. I really, really, I'm on board, and I support your evangelism wholeheartedly. I really, really do, because if just for families, no matter what state they're in, if they're in turmoil, if they're separating or whatever, having the skills to discern the emotional part and just the communication part, and to break those things apart so that everybody can just be in a neutral sort of space, right?
Yeah, and actually, I would really say it's not neutral. It's a
It's
conscious
not new.
effort. It's a conscious effort all the time to go from fear to love. It's really, and it really requires practice and work, and consciousness to be aware. Oh, I'm in fear right now. Oh, I'm in fear right now. Wait a minute. How do I get into love? How do I use gratitude? How do I think about my kids? How do I get into love and generosity? Because you know what? If you really think that you have to have those coasters that you had for your whole marriage, and they're your coasters, and you have to have them, well, you could spend $10,000 in court arguing over those coasters. Or you could say, the best thing is that my ex-spouse and I are a great co-parenting team. They want the coasters. Have them. Have them. That's not what's important, right? But unfortunately, many people get into this, fear-based. I got to keep the coasters. If I don't keep the coasters, it's a slippery slope, and I've lost my identity, right? It's scary.
Wow.
Divorce is scary, and there's all of these little touch points, and you think you're doing okay, you think you're fine. Yep, we're doing great, and then the coasters come up, and suddenly you're back into fear again. So having someone kind of at your side to help you go, oh yeah, in fear, I gotta get into love and generosity. That's can be magical. It can be transformational in
Sure.
the long run for people.
Do you see, Beth? Is the person is there usually one person that's wanting to divorce, and it goes it goes smoother for them, or the person what's the or oh, here's a great question: who is this process easier for, men or women, or is it who is initiating the divorce or not?
It's hard for everybody. I think it's hard for everybody. I was talking about that wall of resentment. What happens is when you marry, when you fall in love, you get attached to each other. I think of it like a psychic limb
Yeah.
that's between the two of you, right? It's a connection. It's an attachment. And for at least one person, it's usually just one, actually, that attachment gets smaller and smaller and smaller over time till it's almost non-existent, and that's when they say, I want a divorce. Well, that other person, they still have a great big giant attachment, like a limb that's attached to the other person. And so the divorce feels like you are chopping off a limb. And and it's just like there's a phantom limb there for much of the divorce. This is why I often tell people to take it slowly, take it really slowly, because we sometimes call this that one person is leaning out and has been leaning out of the relationship for a long time. One person is leaning in. And for the leaning in person, they need time to process. They need time to grieve. They just lost an attachment object. This is a trauma. And so it takes a long time to work that through. What's interesting to me, I think, is sometimes the leaning out person is not as interested in personal growth. I don't know why. But they think that they're done. They're over it, right? They're ready to move on. Whereas the person that's been leaving in, who's grieving, who's traumatized, they really need some personal growth right now. So for them, although it's harder, it's also deeper. And those are the people that I've seen the most remarkable and miraculous and really beautiful transformation over the process of the divorce. And that's not always true. Sometimes it's the leaning out who comes to epiphanies that are just super helpful in their life going forward. And sometimes none of that happens. Sometimes we wrangle people in and they stay in their fear the whole time, and we just finally get their divorce done, you know?
Oh, I hope there's not too many of those. I hope there's not too many of those. But I love the mindfulness around this, and I love the education about the breaking down the pieces of communication and the pieces of the feeling emotional body. It's so awesome. Anyway, I think we're about out of time almost, Beth, and I don't even want to let you go. It's like I have an attachment. I'm leaning in. I'm just being funny. Okay, I hope that everybody has gotten some great information here, because I'm sure that if you are not going through something like this yourself during these crazy times, there's a lot of interpersonal agitation. There's just a lot of stuff coming up, and we just want to make sure that everybody has the resources that they need and experts that they can refer to. So thank you, Beth, for being one of those people for us here on the Healing Body, Mind, and Soul channel. Okay, everybody, I hope you got a lot of great information here. Beth's information will be down in the show notes. And until next time, this is Aeriol Asher. Happy healing.